Welcome to this explainer. Look, we all know we need water, right? But today we're going to uncover exactly why that is, all the way down at a cellular level, and how just a tiny microscopic drop in hydration actually changes the physical shape of your brain cells. Let's dive right into an incredible journey that zooms all the way from our everyday baseline survival down to the strict microscopic rules of biology and then scales right back up to how you are functioning and thinking at this very second. To really understand the stakes here, consider this massive biological contrast. The human body is remarkably resilient in a lot of ways. I mean, we can endure an entire month without food, literally burning through stored energy reserves and adapting to starvation. But take away water, there's absolutely no way. We can't last a mere 3 days. It is the ultimate biological ticking clock. And the margin for error here is literally razor thin. 15% is the tragic number. Since water makes up a massive 60 to 75% of our total human body weight, losing just 15% of our total body water is entirely fatal. In fact, even a 4% drop puts us in a state of clinical dehydration that heavily compromises our physical abilities.
Okay, Section 1. Water's molecular magic, molecular structure.
Now check out the sheer asymmetry of H2O. You have two small positively charged hydrogen atoms clumped onto one side of a large negatively charged oxygen atom. This uneven, kind of lopsided shape creates a polar charge. It's almost like a tiny magnet with opposite poles. And this polarity is the absolute fundamental characteristic that dictates how water interacts with basically everything else inside your biological system. Because of that polarity we just talked about, water becomes what we call the universal solvent. Since every single water molecule has both a positive and negative side, it can attract and interact with a vast variety of other molecules. It effectively wriggles into all those microscopic nooks and crannies of other substances, think sugar or salt, and it literally pulls their opposite charges apart, dissolving them. This is the exact mechanism that allows our water-based blood to seamlessly transport vital oxygen, nutrients, and even medications straight to the specific targets in our bodies that need them the most. Moving on to Section 2. Shaping cells and DNA, structural role. Imagine a cell is like a water balloon. A healthy, fully hydrated cell uses its internal water pressure to push outward against external forces, maintaining this plump, highly functional, round shape. But without that internal water pressure, the whole thing completely shrivels and wrinkles up. And at a biological level, structure is everything. If a cell loses its shape, it completely loses its ability to function properly. But water doesn't just fill the cell, it actually forces the cell's outer walls to build themselves. Enter the phospholipid. Because these molecules have a polar head that is super attracted to water and a nonpolar tail that is totally repulsed by it, they behave very specifically in our bodies. When they're surrounded by water, they are forced to spontaneously organize into these protective double layers, hiding all their tails on the inside. This spontaneous structuring is a real game changer. It acts as the gatekeeper for every single cell on Earth, tightly controlling what harmful things stay out and what helpful nutrients actually get to come in. You know, our cells rely on the usual suspects to sustain life, right? We're talking carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. But here is the truly incredible part. Water is fundamentally required to synthesize and break every single one of them down. It physically drives the folding of amino acid chains into highly functional proteins, and it literally orders the characteristic double helix shape of your DNA. Without water dictating that precise physical folding process, your DNA couldn't be properly structured, let alone decoded. Plus, water acts as a chemical shield. Highly acidic or basic substances can be deeply corrosive, completely destroying the shape of our proteins by either stealing or dumping hydrogen atoms. But water steps in to sacrifice itself. It can act as a base by releasing a hydrogen atom, or it can act as an acid by accepting one. This rapid adaptability buffers our cells against really dangerous internal pH changes, keeping our delicate molecular machinery completely safe and sound. So, this brings us to a really fascinating turning point. Since we've established that every single cell, protein, and DNA strand in our body relies on water for its physical shape and chemical safety, we have to ask, what happens when things actually go wrong? Specifically, what happens to our day-to-day cognitive function when we start to dry out? What literally happens to your thoughts?
Which brings us to Section 3, the mild dehydration experiment. Experiment results?
Researchers put 26 healthy young men through a really rigorous randomized trial. Now, this wasn't about extreme desert survival or anything. They just underwent mild treadmill walking in a highly comfortable laboratory environment.
But what's incredibly clever here is that the researchers used a diuretic, 40 milligrams of furosemide, to safely force the body to lose water. They combined this with opaque water containers to effectively disguise the dehydration process. The participants, and actually even the researchers running the tests, had no idea whether the men were in the hydrated control group or the dehydrated test group. It was completely double-blind.
Now, you might be wondering why go through all that trouble with blind testing and diuretics. Well, the goal was precise scientific isolation. You see, previous studies had subjects sweating profusely in intense heat, which makes it virtually impossible to know if their brain function dropped because of water loss or just because their core temperature was dangerously high. The researchers specifically wanted to test mild dehydration. We're talking just a tiny 1 to 2% loss of body mass, without all those confusing factors of heat stress, hyperthermia, or extreme athletic exhaustion. And now, Section 4, Your Brain Without Water, Cognitive Impacts. At a mere 1.59% loss in body mass, the participants experienced some pretty significant cognitive drops. They made more visual errors, meaning their fundamental focus visibly degraded. They suffered slower response times in their working memory, and on an emotional level, they felt notably more tense, anxious, and tired, both during physical exercise and while merely resting. The literal shape of their brain cells was likely losing that internal pressure we talked about, and their thoughts were tangibly slowing down in real time. It's just mind-blowing to think that the microscopic chemistry of a single asymmetrical water molecule scales all the way up to dictate your mood, your memory, and your focus at this exact moment in time. The science clearly shows that even a tiny drop in hydration doesn't just make you thirsty, it fundamentally impairs your brain's processing speed. Which leaves us with one highly practical question for you. Are you fully hydrated right now, or is your brain already starting to struggle? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, don't forget to grab a glass of water today.